Following up on my segment from 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast, I have a story from the Washington Examiner talking about California's failed progressive policy. Now, I am not one to play this game where it's like, look, there's a lot of conservatives that will always point the finger and say failed liberal policies when there's a lot to go through before you get to the point where you say it's a complete and total failure. Except when it comes to California Assembly Bill 5, which everybody thinks is an abject failure just from the get-go. But I love how journalists are being negatively impacted by this, and they didn't say anything when the bill was going through because they're all progressives and they're like, a major victory for the left. And then they were like, wait a minute, we're being fired now. That's right. AB 5, California's latest bill. They say this. California's latest destructive regulation is already backfiring. So let me explain. AB 5 is this gig economy bill. It's basically supposed to limit how you can hire people for gigs like Uber, Postmates, and freelance writing. And what happened is this provision says freelance writers can only write 35 articles per year, I think, or something like that. Some absurdly low number. So all these news outlets are just firing all these journalists. Well, now that the journalists are panicking, people started to realize this law was a bad idea. It's backfiring now, however, because truckers are leaving the state. Why would you want to be in a state where you can't freely trade your labor? You wouldn't. Congratulations, California. So let me say this. I've done many a segment on the California wasteland, and now California is the future of our country. And let me just say it is a gift. It is. California is one of the greatest gifts to America we could ever have. I'll tell you why. We watch the policies get implemented, and it's somewhat isolated. We watch them fail and then say, maybe we shouldn't do that in other places. So now that they've enacted this gig economy law and the truckers are all leaving, they're going to have to backpedal. So long as California acts as the guinea pig for the rest of the country, maybe we can avoid these things. Although the point of my main segment is that Michael Bloomberg is like, I think we should push these policies out to the rest of the country. Yeah, sorry, Bloomberg, it's not going to happen. I hope. Let's read. Californians barely had time to ring in the new year before the state's independent contractor law, which went into effect on January 1st, started wreaking havoc. The law, formerly known as AB 5, was supposed to offer more benefits to workers in the modern gig economy. Instead, it has spectacularly backfired on those very workers. Once lauded by Vox as cracking down on the gig economy by offering workers basic labor protections for the first time, AB 5 has forced news outlets, including Vox, to cut ties with hundreds of freelance journalists in California. This is due to the law's stipulation that any writer submitting more than 35 pieces a year be given full employee benefits. The funny thing about Vox is that they praise this, and then, the law goes into effect, and then the headline is, Vox lays off hundreds of writers. Congratulations! You praised this. This is literally what you wanted. It's I don't even know what to say. I mean, you got what you wanted. Congratulations. There you go. But I will point something out. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I really don't like it. But I will say, you can argue that these people wanted this bill and it's backfiring. Or you can say they wanted the bill because it would backfire, and then they can call for more government control to fix the failing economy. This is likely going to make more people homeless when they lose their jobs. Truckers are going to flee the state. There's going to be a crisis, and they're going to say, only we can solve it, and no one is going to stop them. Whether or not it's intentional, that's what's going to happen. AB 5 affects roughly 2/3 of California's 2 million independent contractors, ranging from janitors and childcare workers to retail and construction workers. Notably exempt from the law are white-collar jobs, such as medicine and dentistry, but the level of clout matters in this distinction. A physician specialist who contracts his labor is exempt from AB 5. A nurse is not. California has spent decades imposing onerous regulations on its employers and its workforce. There's no doubt that stay-at-home moms who benefit from freelance writing gigs, and some of the state's 325,000 Lyft and 200,000 Uber drivers will simply have to eat the cost of government cracking down on their income. But for others, the law is simply a bridge too far. Despite securing an 11th hour legal exemption from AB 5, truck drivers began to flee the state before the clock struck midnight on New Year's Eve. The California Trucking Association, one of the many organizations challenging the law in court, claims that it's fielding daily calls from despondent truckers, plenty of whom have emigrated from the state or plan to do so permanently. Although truckers have thinner profit margins to cushion the blow of the law, it's not hard to imagine that workers such as interpreters and copy editors who require multiple clients but are covered by the law anyway will soon follow suit. Could you imagine a state without truckers? How are you going to get your food? Sorry, you need the truckers. And these people, and I know there may be people coming from other states, come and drop it off and leave. But what about people who got to drive from, the produce, produced by farmers in, Tulare County and ship that off to Northern California? If there's no truckers, what are you going to do? Man, California, y'all are nuts. There's more to read, though. I say this. Still, not all hope is lost, at least just yet. Uber and Postmates have launched a sweeping court challenge to AB 5. They're not the only companies or associations to do so, but their case incorporates the most wide-reaching arguments. As Josh Blackman of the Volok Conspiracy argues, aspects of the suit likely will not hold up in court. But seeing how Uber's operations have continued unfettered into the new year, it might just be recalcitrant enough to persevere against California's political poison. The reason I'm laughing right now is because people have often pointed out to me that sometimes, I don't notice this, I use like large and sometimes obscure words. I can never really think of large, obscure words off the top of my head, but I can certainly say recalcitrant enough to persevere against California's political poison is a particularly above average verbose kind of statement. Maybe verbose is a word, I don't know. The point is, most people, this, I'm going to deviate right now, but I have to do it. Most people in all languages use like 100 words. It's actually really easy to learn a language, like relatively. All you need to do is learn the 100 most commonly used words, and you'll find yourself being able to converse at a general level. So when words like recalcitrant pop up, people go like, I don't know what that means. And, I get it. And then, but people point this out to me because not everybody knows like weird, obscure words like defenestrate. Go look that one up. I love that word, by the way. Anyway, let's read. If legal challenges don't force California to change course, another development might. By capping the state and local tax deduction, the 2017 federal tax law forced wealthy Californians to absorb the full cost of their state's high taxes. These taxes, along with the state's complex web of regulations, are harming workers and employers alike, fueling a mass exodus of Californians that is already expected to cost the state a seat in the House of Representatives. If AB 5 further exacerbates the trend, it may be the cold, hard hand of political reality rather than the courts that undoes this disgraced law. Well, I'll tell you what. Like I said, I think it's a good thing. California's a guinea pig. They're going to enact all these laws. They're going to hurt themselves, and then they're going to desperately backpedal. And we're going to see other states say, maybe we shouldn't do what they did because it backfired miserably and really, really hurt them. But there is hope. I have another story here from the Washington Post that talks about Uber's secret project to bolster its case against AB 5. They say the ride-hailing giant launched a version of its app for its California drivers, an attempt to push back on a law aimed at turning independent contractors into employees. They say, Uber's chief technology officer, Thuan Pham, put out a cryptic call for volunteers to join a critical project on AB 5 that would involve developing new app features, according to an October email viewed by the Washington Post. The effort, undertaken by policy, legal, marketing, technology, and operations staffers, was regarded as one of the most critical, impactful, and urgent efforts at the company, expected to deliver most of its value through the end of the year. Those volunteers formed a team to work on what was dubbed Project Luigi, a company-wide initiative tasked with changing Uber's app for California drivers, according to internal documents and people familiar with the companies thinking who asked not to be named for fear of retribution. The initiative sought to revamp some inherent aspects of driving for Uber, including adding the ability to see estimated trip fares up front and then reject a trip without penalty. Basically, it sounds like what Uber is doing is trying to remove the job aspect of Uber, give more control to the drivers so they can claim, you run you, straight up. Those new features, some now publicly unveiled, would help Uber build its case that its drivers are free from its control and are independent. Key aspects legislators outlined as exemptions to the new statewide employee mandate. Obviously, Uber wants to make the case that drivers are operating on their own because without that, they have no argument on their worker classification. They clearly are worried about losing and want to have a backup plan. They say Uber's spokesman said the company's making a number of changes to the Uber marketplace. Yeah. I don't care too much about this. Okay. The reason I highlight the general gist of this is to say two things. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. It's possible that the lawsuits against this law fail and California pulls out of its tailspin. The other thing I want to point out is that massive companies like Uber can invest tens of millions of dollars to find a loophole in your law. This is the most mind-numbing thing about expansive progressive policies. They never stop to ask, did we go too far? Because I think some of these rules, some of these policies can work, but at what point do you stop and say, this is as far as we should go because going even further will cause harm? Put it this way. Uber, Starbucks, Walmart, whatever. They can afford legal fees for any change in regulation, increase in base rates like minimum wages and stuff like that. Small businesses and contractors cannot. So who gets hurt by regulation? Not big business that's got, Uber operates all around the world. They can eat the loss in California to get a business victory. But what about that single mom who writes, blogs about fettuccine Alfredo recipes, and now she's lost her job and she can't make money to feed her kids? These laws aren't helping anybody. These people are nuts. I keep these ones short, so I'll leave it there. But I got a million and one things to say about California, man. Hence the California Wasteland series. I'll make a playlist about it. But stick around. I got a couple more segments coming up for you in a few minutes, and I will see you all shortly.